Alright, hey guys, Paxer, welcome back to another weekly meta report. This is the first weekly meta report for the year of 2026. Really excited to see what this year entails for this game. Hopefully they add more PvE as well as a more diverse meta, because you'll see in this video that one deck has a huge dominance in tournaments from this week compared to other decks. But yeah, this is your first video on my channel. Really do consider if you like and subscribe. Would really help me out mentally, because this is actually my third time recording this part. I recently switched from Streamlabs to OBS, and OBS is far better. And yeah, my first time recording, the audio didn't record. Second time, it only recorded some parts. Third time, it sounded like I was talking through a toilet. I'll play the initial introduction audio at the end, just in case you guys want to hear how I sound like talking through a literal toilet. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right into the weekly meta report. How this video usually goes, I'm going to be reviewing 2 tournaments from the past week, looking at a couple of top performing decks from each, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to be using one of them in PvP to see how it performs. The website that I'll be using will be in the description below if you want to check it out for yourself. And yeah, just going to get right into it. So the first tournament that we're going to be going over is the Pocket Mads number 14 tournament. Crimson Christmas has a player count of 832. Pulling up the metagame, looking at the most popular decks that were used as well as their win percentage. As you can see, Suicune Greninja, high prominence, 151 players. That's a very special number in terms of Pokemon lore. Yeah, the original 151, 52%. That's a very good percentage, especially with that huge sample size. And then Magnezone Mega Absol EX, 76 players, which is very slightly more than half of the players that use Suicune Greninja, which is kind of interesting, just like how that works. And then looking at the win percentage, 44%. So yeah, very consistent. The third most used is Hydreigon Mega Absol EX, 58 players, 45% win rate. And yeah, just looking further, I feel like most of these cards are recurring contenders, with a bit of exception. As you can see, we'll talk about Furfrou later on. But yeah, Mega Altaria Furfrou, 50 players use this. So overall, looking at this, a lot of decks are rather consistent. And then looking at the standings, top 10. Yeah, man, if you're sick of Suicune Greninja, they're here to stay. Yeah, they won't be leaving anytime soon. I do kind of compare them to Giratina because they're overall just good investments for the foreseeable future. Giratina, same thing. Once they released, they've just been super good for several months. Nowadays, slowly getting phased out, but Suicune Greninja, in a sense, are their spiritual successors, which is why I feel like they need a ship name similar to Giratina. Suikinja. Yeah, this is my third time making that ship name, but yes, Suikinja. I'm gonna shut up now, but yeah, Suikinja, yes. Then unfortunately, they're here to stay. If you're a new player and you're looking for a good deck to invest in, I feel like this is a safe choice, because I mean, especially when it comes to water archetype, it's very hard to replace them as the best water deck, especially since Dina is kind of prioritizing on this very bulky and also Pokemon that require a lot of energy, such as, of course, Mega Blastoise EX, as well as Mega Gyarados EX, and running those aren't really that worth it. The reason why Suicune Greninja is very good as it is because they both require 2 energy to attack. This is very fast-paced, and the current meta prioritizes on just fast-paced chip damage, which is why Suicune Greninja will still be meta relevant for the foreseeable future. And yeah, speaking of Suicune Greninja, Z-Verum takes first place using the iconic duo. Not really gonna go that in-depth with this deck. If you've been playing this game for at least 4 months, then you probably already know how this deck works. But yeah, ideally you want to lead with Suicune Ex, maximizing the energy after 2 to 3 turns, attacking using Crystal Waltz. Now, Crystal Waltz is variable. It really does vary depending on how many Pokemon you have in your bench, as well as how many Pokemon your opponent has on their bench. And with that being said, a very good substitute for Suicune Ex is Greninja Ex. This guy is essentially the water version of Celesteela. Far more consistent, especially in regards to attacking. So ability shifting stream, once during your turn, you may switch your active water Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon. And this guy does a flat 100 damage. So yeah, Suicune Ex could do slightly more, 20 more damage, especially if both benches are built. But let's say your opponent's bench only has 1 Pokemon or no Pokemon at all, and you're only doing like 60 damage with Suicune Ex. You could sub in Greninja EX to do a flat 100 damage. So more reliable than Suicune Ex, and at the same time, its ability makes it super easy to sub in. But I feel like more likely than not, you're most likely running this Greninja, the non-EX version, more than Greninja EX, because this guy, you can get a ton of value, as most of you probably already know, because of its ability right here. A very popular combo is the Water Shuriken Cyrus combo. So you would Water Shuriken one of your opponent's bench Pokemon, Cyrus them in, and to start pummeling their Pokemon from there. I feel like this deck is the main reason why decks that require a bit of build-up, such as Mega Blastoise EX as well as Mega Gyarados EX, don't really work in today's meta, because yeah, I met Greninja Cyrus combo before they're built, And in those cases, I mean, they're Mega EXs, so if you knock that out, you instantly win. This deck also has Indeedee, primarily as a support, just healing up 20, and that 20 damage of healing could help you out in the long run. You gotta be very careful, especially if it's a mirror match, because if you are going against a Suicune Greninja using this deck, placing down Indeedee could be a liability later on, since your opponent can Greninja Cyrus this Indeedee and just potentially win the game if they already got 1 point. You have Mars here as well, just amazing, especially if your opponent does knock out Suicune Ex. You can Mars after that, leaving them with 1 card. And then looking at the matches, only lost 1 time against an Altaria deck. Non-EX and Mega. Might as well pull it up right here. So this is the deck list. Comparing it side by side. So yeah, this deck beat this deck. And looking at it, it looks like, I feel like this is where like knowledge really does play a crucial role in this game. Like, sure, I mean, I feel like it's kind of obvious. Most TCG games require a ton of knowledge. I feel like this game is a lot more limited, especially since the game is fairly new. I mean, looking at other games like Duel Masters or like just the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, there's a lot of like stuff you have to know, like counters and like all these cards your opponent could play that could counter you. So a lot more stressful. But for this game, especially if you're going against like Suicune Greninja, playing this deck, you want to be very conservative with the cards you get out in the field. So this deck has 3 baby Pokemon. That's essentially free game for non-EX Greninja. Because keep in mind, Water Shuriken will be 2-hit KOing the baby Pokemon. So yeah, I mean, you can just play very passively and just like eventually just win the game. So with that being said, I feel like this deck primarily led with the Altarias and Oricorio. Most likely not even getting Mega Altaria, Pichu, or even Mantyke out. Because, yeah, they can definitely go for a 1-1-1 strat. So, sub in Oricorio. Oricorio makes it so that Greninja EX and Suicune Ex can't do anything. Your opponent has to lead with Greninja. Non-EX Greninja is an amazing counter to Oricorio, doing 80 damage. And as you can see, Oricorio has 70 HP. However, this deck is running Giant Cape, so then it'll take 2 turns for Oricorio to get knocked out. This deck is also running this Altaria from Secluded Springs. This 40 base damage, if this Pokemon has 2 or more different types of energy attached, this attack does 60 more damage. Alright, my mistake. I thought they were running the other Altaria. You can very much run this one as well. The one from B1. This one is colorless and can do a max damage of 80. Whereas this one can do a max damage of 100. I feel like this guy led with Pichu, beating Altaria and maybe even Oricorio, and just playing it from there. Pichu gets knocked out, probably sub into Mega Altaria. After Mega Altaria gets knocked out, Oricorio just sweeps, with a bit of RNG mixed into it because you never know. Maybe this guy got a super goated starting hand, whereas this guy only got this one Frokeep, sure. Ultimately hard to tell, but nevertheless, this guy did end up winning the tournament. As you can see, beat another Mega Altaria deck, a couple Magnezone Oricorios as well. And yeah, that's Suicune Greninja. Next deck that we'll be going over is second place by Frog EX Takahiro using Magnezone Oricorio. This deck, you've seen this in tournaments before, but it's a very standard and solid pairing. And it got much better in this meta, especially with the addition of Clement, which we'll be going over later on. But yeah, very straightforward deck. For this deck, you ideally want to lead with either Magnemite or even Oricorio and just take your time from there. Because since this is a non-EX deck, you can go for a 1-1-1 strat, obviously. So just take your time, then evolve into Magneton and eventually into Magnezone, as well as another Magnemite. Once Magnezone gets knocked out, sub another Magnezone. And after that Magnezone gets knocked out, just lead with Oricorio, and then depending on the stage of the game, if your opponent only has EXs out, you're either going to tie or you're going to win. Also keep in mind, this is the new Magnezone card from Crimson Blaze. I'm just going to pull up the previous one just for reference. So this is the previous Magnezone card. Yeah. As you can see, this one has 10 more HP. However, it does 20 less damage, but is much better in my opinion because looking at the attack, requires 3 energy, 2 of them are colorless. During your opponent's next turn, if the defending Pokemon tries to use an attack, your opponent flips a coin. If tails, the attack doesn't happen. So a bit of RNG, but at the same time could definitely help you out in the long run. You could argue that this guy is better because it does 20 more damage, and that 20 damage could benefit you in the long run. However, this one is much better because for one thing, I meant that attack ability can save you, and the other, you can start building your bench. So like in this case, I mean, you can start building Oricorio after getting this guy fully built. Whereas this guy, after attacking, you discard a lightning energy. So you always have to keep on feeding this guy, not building up your bench, and doing this could definitely mess you up in the long run. So overall, this guy is much better. Also, just a slight PSA in regards to the attack ability. This attack ability only applies to the active Pokemon that you attack. So let's say you attack your opponent's active Pokemon, the Pokemon doesn't get knocked out. Next turn, yeah, very straightforward. They have to kind of coin flip before attacking. However, if you do attack your opponent's active Pokemon and you knock it out, and your opponent subs in another Pokemon, that Pokemon does not have the coin flip. This specifically only applies to the active Pokemon. This only applies to the active Pokemon that is attacked. In other words, the defending Pokemon. It might just be me, but I feel like it is slightly confusing, the wording. But yeah, just keep that in mind. I mean, I feel like a lot of people might make the mistake. But yeah, there's something to note. As for the other cards, very straightforward. Professor's Research, Cyrus, PC Lady, Copycat, Guzma, Pokeball, Red Card, Giant Cape, and of course I skipped this guy, Clemont. A new card, and you get a ton of value in this deck running Clemont. At least one copy. But yeah, as you can see, put 2 random cards from among Magneton, Heliolisk, and Clemont's Backpack from your deck into your hand. In other words, if you're not running Heliolisk or Clemont's Backpack, after using this card, you are guaranteed 2 copies of Magneton. Just flat out, which you're getting already a ton of value. It's kind of insane. No one really asked for it, but I mean, I feel like no one's really complaining. Unless people do hate Magneton, but we did get Magneton buffs in this pack for some reason. And if you guys are curious how the new Magneton looks, because we did get a new Magneton as well. This is it. Just looking at it, yeah, not worth running. Like this, you get so much value running this guy. But yeah, that's the deck. And then looking at the matches, lost 3 times. Okay, yeah, of course, lost the first place. Lost another Suicune Greninja, as well as a Magnezone Mega Absol EX deck. Might as well pull it up right here. So this is a deck list right here. Very similar, just comparing it side by side. Of course, they are running Magnezone and Magneton. But for this deck, the cool thing about Magneton is that it's self-sufficient. It's very similar to Giratina EX, but in my opinion, far better. Because, yeah, looking at the ability Volt Charge, you guys probably already know, each turn you are able to generate 1 lightning energy from your energy zone. So, yeah, with that being said, looking at this deck, it is running Pure Darkness. And this guy could get purely built, purely from Magneton's ability right here. So you would sub into Magneton, use Volt Charge, next turn, Volt Charge again, and then evolve into Magnezone, feed 1 Darkness Energy, and then Magnezone can just attack. Just like that. You have 1 copy of Darkrai as well as Mega Absol EX. Darkrai EX, once again, doesn't need any introduction. Ability Nightmare Aura is amazing, doing a decent amount of chip damage. And in 1 turn, if you do pair Magneton's attack with Darkrai EX's ability, you are doing 110 damage, which is the same as this guy. Also, if you guys are wondering if you can run this Magnezone in this deck, you can, but it's very unlikely because looking at this Magnezone, after attacking, you discard a lightning energy. So if you do use Magneton's ability Volt Charge, you're only attacking twice, essentially. After that, which is very reminiscent of like a previous deck. I vaguely remember a deck that did that, where like Magnezone will break after a couple turns because you do run out of lightning energy. Whereas for, of course, this Magnezone doesn't discard any energy, so once it's fully fed, you just keep on attacking. No limitations whatsoever. You got Chingling, of course, amazing early game. Mega Absol, good early game as well. I mean, depending on the state of the battle, you might be forced to lead with this guy your early game, and then if you're going second, your second turn, this guy can start attacking, disrupting your opponent, getting rid of Cyrus, potentially. At the same time, keep in mind this Mega is a liability. Could definitely lose you the game, especially if your opponent has Suicune Greninja. But yeah, the ideal playstyle is to lead with Chingling, eventually sub into Magnezone, and then after that, either sub in Darkrai EX or Mega Absol EX and just sweep. Looking at the trainer cards, Professor's Research, Lucia primarily supporting your chances on getting Chingling and Magnemite out. Cyrus, Sabrina, Copycat, Clemont, of course, Pokeballs, and 1 red card. Overall, this deck is super fun to use. I did use this at the end of my previous weekly meta report, and I had a blast. Using Magneton always feels super satisfying. Same thing with Darkrai EX, you're feeding this Pokemon as well as doing a bit of damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Mega Absol is cool. I mean, later on, again, discarding your opponent's Cyrus could definitely win you the game, but at the same time, it really depends if they have Cyrus in their hand. I've definitely won battles where my opponent will Mega Absol. I don't have Cyrus in my hand. My next turn, I pull Cyrus, and I win the game. So that can very much happen, but overall, still a very good investment in my opinion, especially with Magneton and Darkrai EX. But yeah, coming back to Magnezone Oricorio, of course they lost. They also lost against Greninja. Suikinja stocks just keep on rising. But yeah, that's a Pokémon's number 14 tournament. Overall, I wouldn't be surprised if the meta next week will be very similar to the current meta, because I feel like the meta has somewhat solidified in a sense, at least with Suicune Greninja prominence. Like, they will never go anywhere in the future. But in regards to Magnezone Oricorio, I feel like that's gonna stay. Hydreigon Mega Absol, very good at pairing as well. But yeah, that's a Pokémon's tournament. The next tournament that we will be going over is the Frog EX Super Cup. Has a player count of 424. Looking at the metagame, very similar to Pokémon's. You can see, yeah, Suicune Greninja, 50% win rate. Magnezone Mega Absol EX, 48% win rate. Mega Altaria Ex Greninja, 43%. And looking at the standings, first place does go to Momo, using the Hydreigon Mega Absol EX deck. Pulling it up right here, very similar to the previous month's Hydreigon Mega Absol decks. The previous months, they did have, instead of Furfrou, most decks ran non-EX Absol. I might as well just look at Furfrou right now, as well as non-EX Absol. This guy, people would use this guy to just chip the opponent's bench, doing 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. However, nowadays, I feel like there is a shift to Furfrou. So looking at Furfrou, HP of 70 basic. Ability Fur Coat, this Pokemon takes negative 20 damage from attacks. Could definitely help you out in the long run. And the thing that makes this guy amazing is the attack Tackle. It requires 1 colorless energy and does 30 damage. So this card is an amazing counter to baby Pokemon such as Chingling, which is dominating the meta. And of course, looking at this, Chingling does have 30 HP. So just one-shotting Chingling and still being somewhat of a tank, especially early game, taking negative 20 damage from attacks. So yeah, I feel like that's a very good counter to Chingling. If you do hate Chingling, then that's a very good card. And then looking at this deck overall, you primarily want to get Hydreigon out as fast as possible. And to do so, you're using rare candies. In other words, Chingling will be extremely disruptive using this deck, which is why Furfrou is an amazing counter. So using this deck, you want to lead with Furfrou or even Dino if you're playing kind of risky. If your opponent doesn't have a Chingling, lead with Dino. Eventually evolve into Hydreigon. In a couple of turns, Hydreigon / Furfrou will get knocked out. Then you would sub in another copy of Hydreigon. And then once that Hydreigon gets knocked out, sub in Mega Absol EX and the sweep. Indeedee, as you can see right here, is in this deck, primarily as a support, healing up 20 damage, and overall solid support, especially looking at Furfrou. I mean, Furfrou already takes negative 20 damage from attacks, and if you pair that with Indeedee's ability, you're essentially negating 40 damage. And looking at Hydreigon, after using Hydreigon's ability, this card does take 30 damage of recoil. However, pairing that with Indeedee's ability, you're essentially only taking 10 damage. And then looking at the trainer cards, Professor's Research, Copycat, Cyrus, Giovanni, which could help you out in the long run, especially if your opponent is running Suicune Ex and doesn't Giant Cape, because keep in mind, Hydreigon does 130 damage, plus Giovanni does 140. Could definitely just one-shot at Suicune Ex, getting a ton of value. And speaking of doing more damage, this deck also runs Rocky Helmet, and of course Pokeball and Rare Candy. And then looking at the matches, lost twice, Mega Altaria Greninja, as well as Mega Altaria Indeedee. This deck, it's very straightforward. For this deck, you either want to lead with Chingling or Jirachi, and then eventually sub into either non-EX Altaria or even Mega Altaria EX, and just bully your opponent. This deck is very fast-paced. You can get Mega Altaria out your second turn going second. Depending on what cards you have, your second turn going second, Mega Altaria EX can just flat out attack, doing 130 damage. Indeedee, once again, here as a support. Also, since this deck is running Pure Psychic, it doesn't say, but I'm pretty sure it's running Pure Psychic, doing 30 base damage, and does 30 more damage for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So yeah, you can potentially just do a lot of damage attacking with Indeedee Ex. And yeah, very straightforward. I can very much see how this deck won against this deck. Depending on your starting hand, this deck does have Furfrou. However, of course, Chingling is an amazing counter to Dino, getting Hydreigon out, and although this deck does have 2 copies of Furfrou, I can very much see this person getting very unlucky, not being able to get Furfrou out, whereas their opponent is just rocking with Chingling, being super disruptive for several turns. And yeah, that was the Hydreigon Mega Absol EX deck. The last deck that we'll be going over was made by Hugo 2 LA Knight. Got 6th place using a Mega Venusaur EX deck, which is oddly surprising since this guy requires a ton of buildup. I'm sure you can get him out like your 3rd turn, but still pretty huge buildup nevertheless. But still pretty cool to see, especially surpassing Mega Charizard Y. As you can see, Mega Charizard Y got 10th place. And I might as well just pull up the metagame just looking at Mega Venusaur. 18 players use this deck and has a 50% win rate. And then, yeah, which is still pretty good. I mean, looking at Mega Charizard Y, 8 players, higher win rate, but that is a smaller sample size overall. Interesting, because this deck isn't running a Cyrus, and I feel like in today's meta, most decks require you to run at least 1 copy of Cyrus, because I mean, Cyrus can definitely be your win condition later on in the game, but this deck, I feel like doesn't really need Cyrus. I mean, it could still help you, but depending on your RNG, not really, because Mega Venusaur EX is an absolute monster. Might as well just pull up this card right here. HP 240, stage 2 of course, has 1 attack, Critical Bloom, does 120 damage, requires 2 grass as well as 2 colorless energy. After attacking, your opponent's active Pokemon is now poisoned and asleep. So plus poison, you are doing 130 damage in 1 turn, and then the sleep condition, if your opponent fails that, then they cannot retreat, and then so next turn you can just one-shot that opponent's Pokemon and just win the game. I feel like the only way they could retreat is if they have 1 Lyra. Just pulling up for reference, why not? Lyra, and of course, either Celesteela or the Water Celesteela, aka Greninja Ex, that can make it so that I can just retreat from their active. Also, Solgaleo, yeah, but I mean, Solgaleo EX is really not getting played that much in the meta. But yeah, overall, a very fun card to run. Ivysaur is here as well. This card is crucial to get Mega Venusaur EX fully fed. Because looking at this synthesis, take 2 grass energy from your energy zone and attach it to this Pokemon. In other words, by the end of your turn, after using synthesis, Ivysaur will have 3 energy attached. Next turn, evolve into Mega Venusaur, feed this Pokemon 1 energy, and then just like that, you can just start attacking. I feel like this attack is very similar to Stoke in regards to Shining Revelry Charizard. It's very similar, but I feel like using Ivysaur, of course, Ivysaur isn't really that tanky compared to Mega Venusaur EX. So if your opponent can one-shot Ivysaur, then you essentially lose. But it's pulling up Charizard, might as well. So pulling up, I believe it's from this. Yeah, Stoke. Very straightforward. You would Stoke. Your opponent can attack Mega Charizard EX, do a bit of damage, but more likely than not, Charizard EX will survive. And the next turn you can do 150 damage. Steam Artillery requires 5 energy. So you're not building this guy manually. You essentially have to use Stoke, because if you build this guy manually, it's going to take so long. Similar to Mega Venusaur, but you can, it only requires 4 energy, so you can build this guy manually. I'll show the footage at the end of the video, but for my initial recording for this weekly meta report, I ran into an issue where I had to build Mega Venusaur EX manually. And sure, it took like several turns, but I ended up winning the game. And you shall see later on in the video, which is why you guys should stay tuned. But yeah, you could make this guy work building him manually, which is kind of crazy, but at the same time, it somehow works. Yeah, and then looking at the rest of the cards, Chingling, of course, this for early game disruption. Professor's Research, Lily supporting Mega Venusaur EX, making this behemoth a lot more tankier than it is. Copycat, Sabrina, Pokeball, red card, Heavy Helmet, which, I mean, you could argue is Leaf Cape is better. I mean, you can very much just run Leaf Cape instead of Heavy Helmet, because Heavy Helmet only negates 20 damage, whereas Leaf Cape, the Pokemon gains 30 HP. Also keep in mind, Heavy Helmet only applies to Ivysaur as well as Mega Venusaur EX. Doesn't apply to Bulbasaur, and depending on your RNG, I mean, Bulbasaur might benefit from that extra 30 HP. But then again, it really depends, and this deck is rather consistent in regards to getting out your Ivysaur and Mega Venusaur, primarily because of Quick Grow Extract. This card right here revolutionized Grass type. This is essentially a must run for most Grass type decks. As you can see, a lot of text, but to summarize this, treat this card as an evolution Pokemon, an evolution card. So looking at the deck right here, if you have a Bulbasaur EX into active, and you don't have Ivysaur in your hand, but you do have a Quick Grow Extract, treat Quick Grow Extract as an Ivysaur. Because you would use this card, Ivysaur would fly out of your deck, and just like that, Ivysaur is out in the field. And let's say your next turn, you don't have a Mega Venusaur EX in your hand, but you have another copy of Quick Grow Extract. In that scenario, treat Quick Grow Extract as a Mega Venusaur EX. So you would use it and then instantly evolve into Mega Venusaur. And then just like that, Mega Venusaur EX is out. Another way to look at it is that this deck has both 4 copies of Ivysaur, as well as 4 copies of Venusaur EX. So hopefully I explained that in an understandable way, but yeah, overall, just a ton of fun to use. It's super consistent. And yeah, that was the deck. And then looking at the matches, lost twice, tied once, right? So lost to Magnezone, Mega Absol, Magnezone Oricorio, and tied against Hydreigon, Mega Absol EX. So we've seen most of these decks already, which is rather interesting. I feel like this deck should have won against this deck for the most part. I mean, looking at Mega Venusaur Ex, one, it's rather tanky, especially paired with Lily in most circumstances. Hydreigon will be 3-hit KOing Mega Venusaur EX, which is kind of crazy to think. But the main downside for Hydreigon in this scenario is that 1, it does take recoil using ability. Sure, Indeedee is here to mitigate that recoil. Hydreigon is weak to grass, and of course, Mega Venusaur is grass type. So doing 150 damage after attacking, which is kind of insane, just one-shotting Hydreigon. So yeah, on paper, I feel like this deck should have won, but it might have been kind of a mix of like bad RNG. Again, it's really hard to tell. I really do wish they do add like a replay system where like you can kind of view battles to kind of like analyze them. I think Clash Royale does something very similar. So yeah, hopefully they can implement that sometime soon, because I'm rather curious on how this game did tie. But nevertheless, Venusaur EX is still an overall solid deck to use. And yeah, that was the Frog EX Super Cup. Overall, again, looking at the contenders, slightly more diverse than Pocket Mad's. Smaller sample size, so I mean, that could be part of the reason, but yeah, Mega Venusaur EX, really do like to see this card's prominence. But yeah, to end the video off, I'm going to be using this deck in PvP, and we'll see how it performs. All right, here we are in PvP battle, going first. Okay, disclaimer, this is like my 3rd time recording this part of the video, and each time I'm always going up against a Bulbasaur. It's always against a Bulbasaur for some reason. And okay, The last few times I went second and I lost. This time going first, which does give us the advantage. I feel like ideally using Mega Venusaur EX, you want to go first because it makes it so that you can get Mega Venusaur out a lot faster. So at this point, we might as well lead like this. End our turn. This guy better not just surrender, I swear. But yeah, if you guys are curious, I had to re-record this portion specifically as well as the introduction. A lot of fun, man. I don't know why, but I ran into a lot of issues recording this. So again, hope you guys do like and subscribe. Okay, so very straightforward. So at this point, I might as well Quick Grow Extract because this is pretty good. I could evolve using Ivysaur in my hand, but Quick Grow Extract is very nice because for one thing, you are thinning the deck out. So just like that, Ivysaur gets out. Easy. Professor's Research. Getting a huge lead. All we need now is a Mega Venusaur. Perfect. Just like that. Let's do this. Synthesis. And as you can see, my opponent has a very similar deck as mine, but I went first. And I get such an insane value because now you have to evolve into Ivysaur. Yep, Quick Grow Extract. They copycat, okay. I'm going to go over one more battle. It's when I did go second and red card. Crap. Alright, that could actually hinder us a lot. Next battle, we'll go over a scenario where I had to manually build up Mega Venusaur. So, doesn't matter. Okay, GG. This is why Quick Grow Extract is amazing. As I mentioned earlier, treat this as an evolution card. So we got Bulbasaur, whatever. We can just do this, evolving into Venusaur, and GG. Just like that. Yeah, very straightforward. And again, for some reason, I keep on going against mirror matches. Might as well just, sure, why not? Heal with Lily. Easy one-shot onto this Ivysaur. So yeah, in mirror matches, you always want to go first because you just get an insane lead going first, just like that. All right, so here's the battle. I'm going to briefly skim through it. Also, again, as I briefly mentioned earlier, audio didn't record. However, of course, the footage did. So, okay, looking at this, starting out, this is my starting hand. I got Ivysaur. I got essentially the whole family out. Bulbasaur, Ivysaur, and Mega Venusaur. Lily, Professor's Research, looks very promising. Opponent, as you can tell in a bit, is using... yeah, Mega Altaria EX, paired with Chingling and also Furfrou. Another very meta-relevant deck. Right, so right here, I do place another Bulbasaur down. In most circumstances, putting another one down could hinder you, especially if your opponent is running Sabrina. But I did place Chingling down, which is essentially a free retreat. So I can just chill like this. And right now, I am just smooth sailing. I'm like, I got this most broken combo. I should be good unless my opponent does red card or Mars me. Next turn, opponent does sub into Furfrou, feeding and also doing a bit of chip damage to Bulbasaur. This turn I'm pretty much set using Quick Grow Extract on my active. I also have Ivysaur in my hand, so it's evolving 2 Ivysaurs on the field. Very straightforward using Synthesis. Next turn, Mega Venusaur EX should be fully built, and I look unstoppable right now. I have 3 cards in my hand. Both of them are Mega Venusaur EXs. There's no way I could lose this, right? And just like that, opponent Marses. They could feel my hand. They had a main protagonist moment where they could just sense I had at least one copy of Mega Venusaur EX, Mars, and just like this, I'm screwed. I'm like, what am I gonna do now? I had a goated hand at Professor Research. Professor Oak, please help me out. Professor, copycat, red card. I got red card, nice. That really doesn't do anything aside from most likely help my opponent. And copycatting as well, I mean, my opponent only has 2 cards, so it could definitely hinder me. This is where I'm like, damn, I let out a very depressed sigh. I don't know what was going on. I thought I lost, but yeah, I was about to give up, but never give up because there's always still hope. I end up feeding Ivysaur, subbing out to damage 1, putting that in the bench, using Synthesis as a last-ditch effort, and just chilling like this. I mean, looking at this next turn, Mega Altaria is definitely gonna one-shot Ivysaur, doing 110 damage, but I just did this as a last-ditch effort. It looks very grim, but I'm about to turn it around. So opponent subs into Mega Altaria, Rocky Helmets as well, one-shotting Ivysaur, rest in peace. I sub into Chingling, going for a 1-1-3 strat. All I need now is a Mega Venusaur EX, and I pull it just like that. There's hope. Hope is still alive. I have to build this guy manually. It's gonna take me several turns, but I have Lily. As you can see, Lily is in my hand. I did take 60 damage, so I can just Lily right here. 240. Hindsight-wise, I probably shouldn't have subbed out of this Ivysaur that was damaged, and instead had that Ivysaur get knocked out by Mega Altaria EX. But I mean, in the long run, you shall see it does work out to my favor. At this point, my opponent doesn't know what to do. They're kind of freaking out and they're like, what is going on? They end up feeding Mega Altaria EX and knocking out Chingling, not knowing what to do. And then here, looking at my Venusaur, 3 more turns until this guy can attack. And perfect, I got another Lily like that. So after next turn, if I do sustain damage, I could Lily, which will help me out tremendously. So all I can do right now is just feed and my turn. Just like that. I mean, other 2 cards, copycat, red card, really don't help in this scenario. I mean, red card later on could help out a little bit, but even then, not that much. Opponent defeats Furfuro, not knowing what to do, attacking. Next turn, Mega Altaria can definitely one-shot, but Lily coming in clutch. Just like this. Yeah. And then now I need one more turn. It's still rather grim, but there's still hope. Oddly enough, this is like my most intense game using Mega Venusaur Ex. And yeah, red carding might as well. It's removing one card, but in this grand scheme of things, might not matter too much. Opponent defeats the other Furfuru, because why not? Attacks. Next turn, I'm screwed. But I can attack this turn. And keep in mind, once my opponent is asleep, if they fail that coin flip, they cannot retreat. So I can just one-shot Mega Altaria. And I feel like I kind of spoiled it already. I might as well copycat just to maximize my hand, but at this point, I drew all my cards, and most of these cards really can't do much. Here we go. Moment of truth. Feeding Mega Venusaur EX. If I attack, my opponent has to get a Tails on the coin flip. So poison, yeah. Asleep. Taking a bit of damage, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter. Because it all comes down to this. Opponent coin flips, gets Tails, and I win. Just like that. So, yeah, it was a rather climactic battle. Building Mega Venusaur EX manually still works somehow. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but opponent, Professor Research, last-ditch effort to do jack shit, because this guy really can't do anything at this point of the game, and concedes. Just like that. Just, I like to imagine my opponent was just like this clapping. It was like, well played, you played a long game, it looked like I was gonna win, you clutched it out. Either that or that guy was absolutely fuming because they lost essentially RNG. But yeah, that's the video, guys. Hopefully you guys did enjoy. Again, make sure to like and subscribe for more. Again, please make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help me out tremendously, both mentally as well as my channel growth, because I really want to keep on doing this for the foreseeable future. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And I'll see you guys on my next video. Alright, hey guys, Paxer, welcome back to another weekly meta report. Will Greninja still be meta as well as Oricorio, or will they get eventually phased out for a much better non-EXs? Only time will tell.